Thank you for coming. I'm hoping I can provide you guys with some useful information that'll make your job a little bit easier. How many coaches are returning from a previous year? Usually there's just a few. Okay, very good. What's that? 4 years ago? Okay, well, not a whole lot has changed. And just for you guys, I'm going to cover a lot of the same stuff I've done over the last few years here and just focus in on the new coaches. But the things that will be different this year is we will focus a little bit more on the diodes and light emitting diodes, and we will focus a little bit more on the dual pole switches versus in the past, we kind of focused on the single pole switch. We did a few things last year on this, but we will do some more things with this. And there's some neat things you can do both with the diodes and with this that I think are key for the kids understanding some of the concepts of electricity. And that's why I'm introducing those items. Not a lot, so I want you to focus on the basics. Hey! Well, we got that. That's the left. Now how do we get it to the, maybe this? Turn the camera on?
You want to use this?
Might have to use the remote to change the input.
What about down below, are those input sources? That black box?
Not really necessary, just makes it a little bit easier. I can kind of point to what I'm about. I'm going to basically work off of this sheet here.
Probably video.
This will be on the website if any coaches aren't available or you want to use this as reference, as are several other things on here. Just to go over some of the basic rules. This year there will be no more than 7 stations. Typically I have 6 at districts and an extra station, 7 at the county level. All 3 district tournaments will use the same questions unless I find an error on there and have to have it corrected. I usually take between 5 to 10 minutes to explain the rules to the kids at the start of the test and ask them if they have any questions. Kind of get them situated, get them going in the right direction, make sure their forms are all filled out. The time at each station is always the same. So basically if we have 30 minutes and I take somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes off to explain the rules, hopefully no more than 7 or 8, that leaves somewhere between 3 to 4 minutes at a station. And once I look at the test and figure how much explaining I have to do and so forth, that's pretty much locked in. For all the districts, at least all the units within the district will be the same. Sometimes I tweak it, someone has 15 seconds more or something like that, but the time is very, very close between the school districts. And sometimes I think some stations are easier than others. There's many stations where the kids aren't going to finish everything. I purposely, particularly at county, I purposely make it difficult so that I don't end up with 20 teams all with 98s and have to find some way to break for tie. One of the ways I try to determine the higher skill levels is who can answer more questions in a certain period of time. So you have some very bright children, and every year it gets more and more difficult to try to stump them. When the time is up, after 3, 3.5, 3:45, whatever it is, the children move to the next station. They always move in the same direction. We usually have people there that kind of help them move around. In the event they finish their section first, there are some sections that are easier. Usually stations 1, 2, and 3 are easier than 4, 5, and 6. So if you want to start your kids out easy, start them at those. If you want to have them start out with something that you're focusing on, don't want them to forget a concept, well then you maybe want to have them start at that station if it's open. In most cases, I have 2 sets of stations running all the way through. So I'll have, and the questions at each set of stations is the same. So station 1 will always have the same questions if I have 2 sets. The only thing I ask is that the kids on the left always stay on the left. The kids on the right always stay on the right, so we don't have to try to figure out why there's 2 kids at this station and no children at the other station. In the event that the kids finish their station early, they cannot move to the next station. That would give them an unfair advantage if the station is open to them. So we're pretty strict on that. If there are 2 students on the team, the kids always ask me this, They may work together or they may work individually. Sometimes one's a scribe, sometimes one tells the answer. Sometimes one works on one section, some works on another. I may have 2 or 3 pages for, per station. Sometimes someone builds, sometimes someone gets them the components. It just depends on how you work. Sometimes they work together, and so forth. A lot just depends on the dynamics of your team, so I encourage you to find what works best for your team to do that. Some districts allow tag-alongs. They don't ask crews. I'm not sure which other ones. They can watch, but they don't answer questions. Tag-alongs, as far as I know, aren't allowed at the county meeting. And it's a good way to get kids familiar with the test. More and more school districts are doing an A and a B team for schools, which I think is even better. The A team usually is the one that counts for points. The B team just gets to participate and try to. They go through a lot of work and effort working with you guys, once or twice a week. It's nice to have them be able to compete on the tests, and every once in a while I see the B team get a higher score than the A team. So, that's not all bad either. But usually the A team is the one that counts. One of the most critical things that I need for you to do is make sure your children bring a pencil. There's always at county 2 or 3 teams where, we forgot to come pencil. And they don't let me know until I say go, and then we're like, here's a box of pencils. I always have a box of pencils in front of the class. They gotta run up there. They waste 30 seconds out of their 3 minutes running up and getting a pencil and putting their name and so forth on the paper and all that. So try to make sure they have the pencils. If they don't, for some reason they forget them, drop them, break them, they break one during the test. I have plenty extra. Have them raise their hand, ask me for pencils, whatever they need, and we'll help them out. And that goes with any questions that the kids have, both at the start and during the test. Don't feel that you can't, once the test starts, that you can't ask questions. Encourage the children to ask questions if they're not sure about something, if they think something is broke, if they think something is not quite correct. I do make mistakes on the questions every once in a while, so it's good for me to know so that I can take that question off the exam for everybody else. If something is broken, I have spares. Usually I have 2, 3 sets of light bulbs. Those break quite a bit. Have them raise their hand if they think that the units are broken. The best thing they can do is grab the spare and use the spare, but if they think something is not right, maybe the multimeter's not working or there's only one of those, I can't tell them how to use it, but I can kind of encourage them and give them hints and stuff like that, because I want everybody to be as successful as possible during this. So the last thing I want is some misunderstanding where someone thinks something and I actually want something else, and perhaps I wasn't clear in the directions. So if they're not sure, make sure they raise their hands. We will be using Scantrons this year. I think there's about 100 questions on the Scantrons. Usually I don't do 100 for the district meets, but I will do the full 100 for the county. Make sure the children are familiar with these. Science Olympiad website, marvelous resources that they have there. One of the things they do have is copies of these Scantrons. Give the kids the test and ask them to do the test with the Scantrons. Every year I ask them, do you guys know how to fill Scantrons? Everybody's yep. Anybody not know how? Raise their hand. Nobody raises their hand, of course. And then I come out there and then I got people circling things. I got people putting big X's on there. I get people doing all kinds of different kinds of stuff. Make sure all it needs is just a small mark in there with the number 2 pencil and they're good to go. And last year I think in one of the districts I had to have a team come in and redo their whole form because they didn't know how to fill it out right. We try to catch it as best we can, but sometimes we miss that early on, and I hate to see that happen where someone actually get a 0 or not getting a full score because something wasn't filled out properly. So I want to make sure they're familiar with it. The other thing is just make sure they're comfortable with this, they know how to do this. Like I said, try to use it when you guys work with them, because the more familiar they are with this, the better they'll be. Don't always start at question 1, because my station 1 starts at question 1. My station 2 is going to probably start at 12. My station 3 is going to start maybe at 25. So I have the kids get used to starting at different places so they just don't always start at 1, because that's a big mistake that a lot of kids make, is they're at station 3 and they want to start at 1. Usually we catch it by the time they get the 3rd or 5th question, but they have to then move all those answers down, and again, that's lost time. So the little techniques, things that you prepare them for taking the test and the exam, just makes things that much easier for them, okay? There may be several hands-on stations. So probably 3 to 4 stations will be stand runs. Then usually I try to have 2, 3, if I can get them in, hands-on, because that's what the children like the best, and that's really where you apply the knowledge that you learn from all the studying and how do you put things together. And the things that I typically do in the hands-on stations is construct a circuit. I will give them a description. I ask them to construct a circuit. I ask them to draw a circuit that I give them directions on. Whenever I have them draw, I ask that they use schematic symbols. Schematic symbols are these symbols here, okay? They are not, you know, for a battery, they're not this, okay? I will see that. Guaranteed, someone will throw one of those up there. Also on the batteries, I'm insisting that the kids put on the polarity on the batteries this year, because particularly with diodes, they really need to know which end is the positive of the battery and which end is the negative of the battery, and so forth. And we've been kind of working into that for the last several years. Dwight County, there were several teams that did not last year get all the points they could have because they didn't have the little plus or minus on them. I'm not real picky that plus minus be on every battery. I would prefer that it's on every battery, but if they forget a plus, you know, they're not going to get marked off for it. I just want to make sure they understand the concepts of the plus and minus, and again, that's what I'm looking for. Some of the things that you guys over there can't see because I got a limited area where I can draw, but I have on this sheet normally open and normally closed switches. And I always forget to update the sheet and show it with the arrows on here for normally open and normally closed. Because in the rush of the 3 to 4 minutes that the kids have to draw several circuits, they draw them very quickly and they're not always neat, which is great because I want them to get as many of the drawings done as possible and I don't want them looking perfectly neat. The problem I run into is when I see something like this, and they draw something really quick like this. Is that open or closed? Well, you know, technically that's open, you know, but chances are if they really want to draw it open, they would draw it like that, where it's clearly open, and when they just drew the line, they just didn't connect it. It's supposed to touch. Instead of having them make sure that it touches and spend a lot of extra time, the easiest thing that you can do when I see this is have them put an arrow on there, and then I know it's open, that it's this. Or if I see it in the other direction, then I know that it's this, where it's closed. And a lot of times they don't even put the dots on there, you know, and that's fine too. I don't need the dots on there. The arrows tell me if the switch is open. I don't want the kids to lose points because I can't figure out what they're doing, but if I clearly don't understand if it's open or closed, then I have to assume that it's wrong, the answer's wrong. So I want to make sure the kids get the most amount of points. The best way they can get the most amount of points is include the arrow on there. And that's why I included that in the notes this year. I want to make sure the children get the maximum number of points. The other thing that causes some confusion is on the sheet, a long time ago, someone said, these wires are not touching. This is the way they draw them in schematics. They're not touching. Well, what are your kids going to think? I pretty much think the kids think those things are going to touch. And one of the guys thought, well, you know, when they touch, the machine puts a nice little circle in there. Well, are your kids going to remember to do that circle every single time? Or are they going to do something like this, where they put a dot on there and I can't see that, you know? So in order to avoid confusion, and if I see that, I have to go that because that's according to the rules. But the best thing that you can do is do this. If for some reason the kids, I try not to have cross wires on circuits, but sometimes kids are drawing batteries and light bulbs and everything, and they got to connect them, and it's like, oh, geez, okay, this is going to cross over here to do this, and you know, and sometimes that happens, and I understand that. But the best way so that there's clearly no mistakes or misinterpretation of the rules is to make sure that the kids do this, and then I can clearly see that that is not touching. Okay, so that's just another little hint for you guys. Makes it easier for the scorers. Also makes it so that your kids get the highest potential of getting the maximum number of points. So we don't have time. Okay. We talked about constructing the circuits. What they have decided to do this year is make it easier, particularly for the first year coaches, cannot everybody hands down the equipment from year to year. These are for sale. I would encourage all of you, totally optional, to pick up something like this, because this is what my intention of using in the county and the district events. It's very similar to the battery holders I already have. If you have the battery holders, if you have these, they're almost identical. I wouldn't worry about that. Light bulbs are probably pretty close to the same. They do include this switch that I talked about, so if you have this switch, you might want to pick it up, or at least pick up one of these switches. And the only thing that's really different, and I'm not sure, we're going to give it a try, if it districts, if they work well, use it in the county. If not, we'll switch back to the old style of lamp, is we'll use these. These are bulb holders, little lamp holders, and the kids have to clip the leads on here. And I just don't know how easy it's going to be for the children to clip the leads on. And if they really struggle and they're spending 30 seconds trying to get it to clip on, then we'll probably go on to this where there's a little more surface area. The problem with this is these bend, and now this one will no longer work. So, you know, kids always try screwing them extra in. They have a tendency to unscrew a little bit easier because they're not as rigid as this. It just causes a lot of problems. So we're going to try something that we hope works a little bit better for the children, but don't be surprised if we end up using these in the county. Like I said, we will try these at the districts to see how they work. We may just have to switch back to these at the county. So either set is fine, but this is the only thing that's really different from you if you have an existing kit. And what I'm encouraging them to do is put on the website where you can buy the individual components from. I used to buy all my components from Carolina.com, great resource for teachers and so forth. I think they're using miniscience.com for these items. I went there and I saw several of the items, so I'm fairly certain. But they promised me that they were going to post the website where you don't want to buy a whole kit, you just want to buy extra bulbs. We'll look at a bunch of bulbs, or my battery holders are busted, and we get battery holders. One other tip I want to just talk to you guys about is, well, one of the sections that probably will happen is I'll ask the kids to build some type of circuit tester. And a circuit tester is just a battery or a series of batteries, and this bulb's burned out, that will light up and easier here. And they may need to figure out what's a conductor and an insulator. And you can see that it lights up, but it doesn't light up good. There are better circuit builders you can build. I'm not going to tell you how to build them. I encourage you to experiment. Your kids will probably come up with one that's better, and you'll say, gee whiz, we're going to use that for the competition. But this one works.
So it's just a continuity check.
Just a continuity check. Just to see, where I use it is just to see if two things. If something with a conductor and insulator, those are the type of questions I ask. I got a whole box full of stuff here and things on the table. Rubber bands, crayon, wood, paper clips, all husky items. Conductor, insulator, maybe the kids are like, oh, I'm not sure. Well, build a continuity tester or use the meter to check and find out. When it comes to the batteries, I use heavy-duty batteries as much as I can. It's getting very hard to find them anymore because everybody has the alkalines. The alkalines are great because they're super bright and they last a long time. The problem that you run up with alkalines, if the kids hook them up backwards, like this, they get very, very hot. So hot that it will melt, or it could, I don't know if it would burn your kids, but it would certainly shock them and surprise them that it's getting very hot. So that's why I use the heavy duty. If you guys want to use them, if your kids are at the skill level where they're always going to hook it up properly and do the positive to the negative and make sure that the positives are facing the correct direction, then by all means use the alkaline batteries because, like I said, they're a little bit brighter, they're easier to see, and so forth. I talked about also the continuity tester. I almost always at the county have a set of questions where I ask about a mystery circuit card. And it looks like this, one I've used for years. It's basically just a piece of foam board with some paper fasteners in it, push through, and some wires connecting this side to this side in just a random pattern. And what I do is I ask the kids to go and say, are they connected? And they might have to use the meter. They might just use this device and say, okay, this is now connected to this, and it should light up, okay? And I have several on the table so you can see how to build them. I have a video on the website that also shows how they look like, kind of taken apart, but this would be the only thing on your part that would require some amount of effort. And like I said, probably a pretty good chance there would be 5 or 6 questions at county about that type of thing. The only essays that I have, because we like to use the Scantrons, are tiebreakers. I tell the kids this, and there's always a group that doesn't listen to me. They are worth 0 points. They are only used to break ties. But some of the kids see them, know the answers, and want to answer those first. Oh, geez, I want to go get this all done. Well, that's fine. But I would prefer that they focus on the questions that count for points and not on the ones that don't count for points. I will probably break 1, maybe 2 ties at county, and maybe every other district tournament I will break a tie. So it doesn't happen that often. Much better to get 2 or 3 extra points by answering the questions than answer the tiebreaker and hope that if you tie someone that you'll end up ahead of them. And it's only if you finish ahead of time, and I usually do it on the easier stations where the kids get bored, so they have something out there to keep them busy. The points assigned to each question may differ based on the difficulty of the questions. Some questions are very simple, might be worth 1 point. Some questions are much more, maybe worth, like true or false, is 1 point. Multiple choice, it's harder to guess. So those are probably going to work to be 2 or 3 points. Some of the drawing, constructions, and that type of thing, you know, those could be worth 5, 10, 15, 20, you know, maybe 40 points. A lot of points towards the more difficult items. So make sure that the kids try to answer as many questions as they can on all the different stations. There may be some basic addition problems, total voltage of a series circuit and so forth, resistance of a series circuit, that type of thing. You may ask that type of thing. There will be a few questions on diodes, and as I mentioned, the big thing this year is going from the single pole, which, or the single throw switch to the dual throw switch. It goes this way and this way. And there'll probably be something where they will have to use this in some type of building or drawing type of thing. This is the meter I use. They're welcome to use any type of meter that you can get your hands on, and so you don't incur additional costs. But I do want to add, I think this is an important thing so the kids can understand the concepts of electricity. They actually see a number for the resistance of something. What thing has a higher resistance, they can measure it with this. What has a higher voltage, they can measure it with this. Hopefully they're passing these along. If they're not, your stores in the area will soon sell out, but they have them online. Normally $39. This yesterday, as of last night at 10 o'clock, they were $17, 17 or $17.99.
$17.99 according to your sheet.
$21 off. So it's not a bad deal. And the nice thing is if you want to use these around the house after this is done with, you've got a nice cheap meter. So fully functional. Yeah. Yeah. And the only reason I recommend using this is sometimes things are different on different meters, and kids learn, oh geez, if I flip it here, I'm going to take this measurement. Well, on this, I'm measuring voltage DC. On your meter, you might be measuring resistance, you know. Again, familiarity sometimes works.
So that's the meter you're using during the competition?
All the competitions,
Okay.
both the counties and the districts, this is the exact meter I have. I have 5 of them, which should be more than enough.
Can they bring their own meter?
Some kids can't bring anything but pencils to the competition. No leads, no meters, no nothing, because we're just afraid that gives someone an unfair advantage over a team that maybe can't afford a meter and is going to use one of these and so forth. So, because there are some really nice ones out there that do a lot of things for you automatically, all arranging, and you don't really have to switch a lot and stuff and that type of thing. So, on the website, they have tons of really good, useful information. I encourage you to go there. This is one thing they just put together this year. very, very useful and explains some very basic concepts. I wish I would have thought of this before, but really for you first-year teachers where you don't understand the difference between series and parallel or how a diode works, you can construct these types of things and you can see for yourself how they work.
Sorry, go ahead. I'll wait.
Also, there's some bonus tips that I had from last year. We had a workshop 2 years ago. They put that on there. There's only so many ways you can draw a series circuit. There's only so many ways you can build a series circuit. There's only so many ways I can do a lot of this stuff. A lot of these questions get used over and over and over again. I really don't like handing this stuff out, but the cat's out of the bag. And they had it last year, and so that some of the parents that had it last year, I want to make sure everybody's fair for everybody. But there are questions on here that I will be using both for district and county. So if they're familiar with this, they can expect to see some of these questions because, like I said, the well is only so deep that I can. And the website is listed, and that's on the website also. So those are the items, plus copies of the Scantron, so you can print out the Scantron. So there is really everything that you should need there to really make your job easier. If you have any questions, submit them to the website and so forth. So we've got a couple more minutes. I had hoped to have some time to go through some sample questions with you. I don't. There's examples of true and false. There's examples of if I close the switch, which lights come on. This is a very basic one. Which lights come on when I close the switch. There's a lot of these where you have to, they may light, they may not light. If all the bulbs light, usually I have things where the batteries are opposed, the switch is open, and so forth. This is a parallel circuit, batteries in parallel, bulbs in parallel, series and circuit where batteries are in series, bulbs are in series. So it's just a lot of different things on there. Some examples of some of the multiple choice questions that I have. Circuit testers, building an aluminum rod, a conductor, or an insulator. Use this button connected to which letter. Draw the circuit, construct the circuit. And then I also have some definitions. And I will add some basic questions on definitions, like maybe volt, amp, and so forth. You know, things like controlled experiment and semiconductor. I'm not sure I'll go into that depth. But things like battery or circuit diagram or circuit that you could use when you explain things to the kids, just so they have a better idea to understand the concepts. I will stay after the next session. I'm going to let you go so you can't go to the next session. Are there any questions right now that I can help answer that maybe I forgot? Yes?
I'm not sure if our school has a kit, that colored sheet, is that available on the website, or do you have to buy the kit to get that?
I'm sorry, the what?
Just that.
That, no. It might come with the kit, because it came with my kit. Yeah, it might come with the kit, but it's on the website for sure. It's on the website for sure, okay? So you don't have to buy the kit to get that additional information. Yes, sir.
Would there be diodes in the circuit?
Yes, series circuit, yeah. Yeah.
Do they build up the
Diodes
diode
usually work.
circuit?
They have to hook the diode up to the circuit,
Okay.
so what I'll ask them to do is just use these clips, and
Okay.
I'll have the leads kind of spread out in the
Okay.
Y, and I'll hook up to one end to the other end. They hook it up wrong. The nice thing about diodes is electricity only flows one way through a diode. So if they hook it up wrong, it won't light up. If they reverse the direction, it'll shut down. So that's an important concept, and the kids kind of get it when they see the light not like that. It's a real good way for them to get some visual stimulation for that.
Do they, are there any resistor, capacitor questions?
Well, the resistor question would be if I had a 2 ohm resistor and a 3 ohm resistor in series, what would be the total resistance of the series, that type of thing.
Okay.
Capacitance is a little bit
That's
more
a little
above
harder.
and beyond the
Okay.
4th or 5th grader, so.
Yeah, you have to measure voltage drop?
They,
Maybe?
I have,
I know you don't want to
you
give
know, I
anything.
have never had them measure voltage drop, but I have had them measure resistance. But I mean, that is a possibility. I could have them measure a voltage drop. And again, that would be something that they use the meter for.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
They don't have to calculate.
They have to know the meter, and they have to know the approximate range that the meter needs to be set in.